now. Professor Sethulego Matebisi is someone who's been watching all of this very closely, the sociologist. Professor, good afternoon to you. Good to talk to you again. The president was so clear in his statement yesterday that the only reason he fired Whitfield was because he had travelled outside the country without permission. But he also only took this action to fire him months after the trip, which was back in March. Can we believe what the president is saying here?
Hi, good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yes, I strongly believe that somewhere there was a bit of undue pressure on the president to act, and perhaps he found it to be an appropriate time to respond to that particular situation that emerged a couple of months ago. Perhaps to demonstrate also that he's in control, because remember, the president constantly finds himself under tremendous pressure from different directions within the ANC and alliance partners and even the public at large, to say perhaps he's now bowing, he's giving in, or he's selling out the ideals of the African National Congress. And perhaps this is one of those unfortunate decisions that had to demonstrate that perhaps the president is still in control.
So what I don't get is what would lead the president to be in this position now. I mean, the timing is a major part of this, and the only thing that I can think of is that there's a faction in the ANC that is demanding that he act, and that he act against Whitfield.
This is exactly my point, to say there's been pressure from somewhere else. And I mean, in the past, there's been questions to say, but there has been a precedent. And I completely differ with that, because the context is different. Here we're talking about a government of national unity, or whatever you want to label it. And I strongly believe the context is different, and the president should have at least spoken to the leadership of the Democratic Alliance to say, I'm not going to tolerate this going forward. But as I've indicated, he's under tremendous pressure, and unfortunately, it seems that particular logic won the battle at the end of the day. But what also surprises me is that once you've taken such a drastic decisions, then why worry? Why cancel a trip on the eve of that particular international, very important summit, by the way, that the president had to attend? So my question is, because I'm not aware of any other political crisis in the country other than some of the challenges that we face, usual challenges that we face in this country.
What does the DA do at 3 o'clock? And I mean, on one side, you have them saying that the ANC, that the president must act against some of the implicated ANC ministers. Now, when John Steenhuisen made that promise, well, it's a threat really, when he said that in Parliament on Thursday, it seemed already obvious then that Ramaphosa was not going to remove those people. I mean, he would face a rebellion in the ANC if he was seen to dance to the DA's tune. I do have some sympathy, I think it's human to have some sympathy with Steenhuisen's point. You have Nobukhle Nkabinde, the higher education minister, who appears to have shown no respect to Parliament and was probably lying on the face of it about this independent committee, this panel to appoint chairs to the seaters. I've never been able to understand why David Mahlobo was included in government when he is so severely implicated in the Zondo Commission and state capture and the State Security Agency.
Well, consequence management is not synonymous with the current government that we have, even for the past 30 years. So we can't expect that now to happen in South African politics. It all depends in which camp you are, even if you are from in the past, you were from the ruling party, but at that stage, it's all dependent whom you are connected, who are your buddies. And I do not believe that the president will suddenly now listen to the Democratic Alliance. But for the DA, they only have two choices. And it's one, yet again, another threat that we are going to withdraw from the GNU. But I think that perhaps will be unlikely. And I don't think that perhaps will be one of the options that the Democratic Alliance will put on the table, for the mere fact that they've got leaders like John Steenhuisen himself in a very key position, agriculture, and perhaps they can demonstrate what a Democratic Alliance is capable of. And another route, perhaps, that they will take, although it is the president's prerogative, is that they may decide to go the legal route or actually use what I would call political persuasion, perhaps to try and engage with the president and the presidency to see otherwise.
So, I mean, there's another issue here with voters, right? Some of this is about the short term, but some of this is about the longer term. If you're the DA, if you're the ANC, you've got to think, what are voters thinking about this? And what do voters think about the president acting against Whitfield but not acting against Nkabinda?
Oh, well, the president, and it's going to be very difficult, because yes, it is the president's prerogative. But my take and my stance is, if this is the kind of president that we have, then you would like to see the same stance being taken against rampant corruption. I mean, municipalities are becoming dysfunctional right in front of the president, and yet each time it's all these public pronouncements, you don't see the same concerted effort to deal with some of the major challenges that we face, and I think that in itself, unfortunately, we will have to leave to the voters, and they will make up their minds to say, but is this the way to approach certain matters? Is this the way to demonstrate that you are reaching out to other parties? And it's going to be very difficult for even myself now to start trying to think what South Africans believe. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen the same effort and the same, kind of decisions coming from the president or the presidency in the past.
Professor Matebisi, there's another aspect to this which I think gets to the heart of what's happening in cabinet and in government, which is that if I've behaved badly and you're my boss and you're the president, and I've behaved badly, at the very least, you could come to me, well, I would think you would come to me and say, you've done this incorrectly, you should not have done this. And maybe it's so serious that I have to fire you, but at least have a conversation. From what Andrew Whitfield says, and this is just on his version now, so maybe it's not entirely correct, but this is what we know, or what's been said. He says, he asked for permission for 9 days before he was due to travel. He followed up every day. There was no response at all. Then only 3-4 months later, you get fired. You would think there would be a conversation somewhere within all of this, but that hasn't happened.
Yeah, no, well, and it tells us a lot, and we all know that obviously you've got a presidency, you've got people around the president who are taking care perhaps of his daily communication. And one of the gripes that I had with this prior permission that I've been seek, because I was not privy to the follow-up, and I mean, if you have even followed up on a daily basis, that in itself demonstrates to everyone that Whitefield didn't want to show any disrespect to the president, if anyone wants to advance that kind of argument. And I think that in itself should have brought a bit of leniency. In any disciplinary matter, that would have weighted quite heavily to the advantage of the so-called accused. And the same applies here. That in itself leaves a better, taste, because the question is really, can you act so drastic when there is evidence that the individual did attempt to apply or make an application to seek for permission to go overseas? So, and I think going forward, the Democratic Alliance is going to use that particular angle, perhaps to advance and make an argument to say, but the president will need to revisit. But it's going to be difficult, because then how will the public look at the president and the forces within the ANC tripartite alliance and many others will then come and say, but the president seems not to have a backbone.
I mean, there's so many other things going on here, and I know some people have suggested that maybe he should never have gone on the trip because he was part of government. It was a DA trip to the United States. Relations between government and the US were at a very difficult stage. So, I mean, that would be one argument. There'll be an argument against that, saying that actually maybe you needed someone from the DA to convince the Trump administration that South Africa's laws are not racist, or that the expropriation bill is not something that people need to be worried about. I mean, could there be something in that? And this reminds me that because we don't know what happened, we're trying so desperately to understand it.
Yeah, but that complicates the matter even further, because I mean, you now going on this trip. I understand the permission part and all that, but the issues that are going to be deliberated are very sensitive, and that in itself could put the country and the government that you are leading, at a disadvantage. Perhaps there should have been a bit of, oversight to say, but do we send a minister who have asked for permission, applied for permission, and yet there's no response? I think there, maybe perhaps the Democratic Alliance could also have handled that slightly better, or in a different way.
Professor Sethulego Matebesi, thank you very much indeed. He's a sociologist at the University of the Free State.